When I left high school to go to college, I was trying to figure out where I would go. Because snow was such a big part of my life at that time, I ended up Googling universities near Whistler and ended up at the University of British Columbia, which was an amazing place unto itself with a temperate rainforest and a nude beach, and weed is legal and you can drink at 19. And it was just a party. And then they also had a bus that came right to the dorms at 5 a.m. to bring you to Whistler for first chair. And I probably put on 70 days that first year season and ended up
solid.
Yeah, a little too solid for my my class load.
Sure. For education purposes. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Thrash Talk with your boy Grizz. I'm here with my boy Sleep. We got an awesome one for you, but before we do, we're gonna chit chat a few minutes. Sleep, how are you, bro?
Dude, things have been good. Man, we're finally through that holiday season. I know by the time this airs, it's going to be February, but we're through all the craziness. We got some sicknesses in the house. Kids are back in school. So stoked that the kids are back in school, finally. It's awesome having the kids at home, but things are crazy. And I know that your season is like right in the mid flow. So what's going on with you, man? How have the competitions been going? And, what are we looking like?
Yeah, busy schedule. Here we go. We're kind of in the thick of it all. So, it was nice because the holidays were a little bit mellow. So we had a chance to, grab an RV and go down to Arizona and get in some warmer weather. We had a friend getting married down there. So we got to spend Christmas in a different light than we've had the opportunity to do so in the past, which was really cool. But yeah, snow season's upon us. So, I've been going out and riding with my kiddo a lot, getting clips of him just crushing it. He's a little beast. He's a little thrasher. So that's been my biggest venture yet, just in snowboarding in general. It's probably my favorite thing to do, to be honest. But yeah, we've got competitions stacked left and right, World Cup circuit, at least for border cross, starts off in Finland, and we go all the way through the end of March, actually. And, we go Finland, we go to Germany, then we go to Italy, and then come home for a little while. And then we go right back over into it in Canada and hit multiple stops there. And then finally it should mellow out, but big stack. I was counting last night, 17 competitions this season. A lot of them are back to back, so a lot in the mix at the moment.
And this is an off year for you guys. This is an off year, and you just gave me so much anxiety telling me how many competitions you have.
Yeah, it's an off year, so it's kind of funny. Like, we'll see what the games year brings, but in the next year will be a world champ season. So, probably similar. We'll see, probably closer to, 20 starts on those years. So yeah, welcome to my world, guys.
Oh, wow, man. It's crazy. There's so many different sides to this sport. There's the park, there's the tricks, there's the racing, and then there's the flowy side, let's call it the surf side, surfing on snow. And we just got off of a great show, and we're bringing you the show right now with Aaron from Elevated Surfcraft. This dude is a beast. I'm really excited for everybody to hear what Aaron has to say. He is changing the game. He's innovating, and that's what we need in these sports. We need people constantly innovating. It was an amazing one, Keith, man. I loved it.
Yeah, I love his mindset of, I'm not just going to mass produce boards for everyone. Like, his whole mindset is like, I want to create a board for the rider, for the terrain that they're going to be on, and make it specific to them. And also with that, vibes have to match, and you'll hear more in the podcast, but this guy has matched vibes to build his tribe, and he's doing it right. He's an artist. He has that mindset, not necessarily just go crush the mountain, but try not to get crushed by the mountain and be one, this fine balance of unison with the mountain, really surf mindset, which I love. I don't want to say jealous, but a little envious of surfers in the sense of, that beach life. And he brings all of that to the mountains. And I couldn't be more stoked. I wish we had more time. I could have sat and chatted with him for 3+ hours and just geeked out on tech and all kinds of stuff. But what he's doing is something totally different in the industry. You know, there's only a handful of brands out there doing this. And anybody who knows anything about artistic boards knows the name of Gentemstick. And I even asked him, I said, is this going to be the US version of the Gentemstick? Because it is an art piece at the end of the day. And I loved his answer. And so I'm excited for everyone to hear it.
Yeah, me too, man. You know, with looking and talking to that guy, it's like a breath of fresh air. You know, that calmness that you have, you take a deep breath and you exhale, and that respiratory pause. It's like, if I'm focusing on it, it's the calmest I've ever been. Talking to this guy, it seems like his whole life is that way. He's just living in that active state of meditation, just in that flow. And it's so cool. It's so impressive. I'm honestly a little jealous. You know, I'm anxious about everything. I'm always stressed, trying to get all kinds of stuff done. Man, they call me sleep. I never sleep. It's so it's so cool to talk to somebody like that. And, you know, hopefully I can learn some things from him in the future to kind of relate in my own life.
Yeah, I mean, this guy seems to just go with the flow. And I think with that is full on just kind of living in that presence of now and gives him the chance. I'm assuming here, but gives him a chance to just live in flow state a lot of the time, which is, boy, you and I both could learn a thing or two, I think, in that sense, because we're always just go, go, go. And you know, he is too, but somehow he just seems so much more mellow about it. So really enjoyed the time with him and really appreciate that he was able to jump on Thrash Talk with us and just, you know, share his stoke, share his vibe, share his vision. And I'm really pumped on these boards. I can't wait to try one. It seems like right up my alley, you know, to be able to paint the canvas, so to speak.
Love it. Love it. So for the Shredding Sassy Social Club, we will be in Colorado the first week of March for a community meetup. We're looking like 8 to 12 people there. We're gonna shred the mountains. We're gonna hit Vail. We're gonna hit Copper. We're really excited, and hopefully we can bring in that section of the Elevated Surfcraft community from the Colorado chapter, and we can check out some of their boards. So I'm really stoked. Hopefully we get to do that here in March next month, and. You know, if you're liking what you're hearing with Thrash Talk, go ahead, subscribe, add the comments. We need everything we can get. Get it on Spotify, on Audible, on Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. We're having a great time, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the show. You.
Woo. Nice. So I'm Aaron Lebowitz. I am the creator, shaper, founder, owner, operator of Elevated Surfcraft. It's a snowboard brand specifically designed to bring surfing back to the mountains. A lot of the inspiration came from guys who were shaping boards in the 70s and 80s, Winterstick and Sims and Barfoot, all with these surfer mentalities, and how could they surf on snow. Growing up, skiing and snowboarding, that wasn't really in my field of vision. Late 90s, early 2000s, Olympics, X Games, twin tips, flips, jumps, rails, park, you know, all kind of became this jam. Big mountain, conquering the mountain mentality. And, you know, as I kind of matured in my riding, those kind of things didn't really resonate so much anymore. And I kind of started gravitating towards the older soul rider and following their trail. Where are they going to? Where are they sniffing the pow out to? What boards are they riding? You know, ending up in all these garages and man caves with these, you know, oh, back in the 80s before we had bindings, you know, or before they allowed snowboards on the mountain, you know, this is what we were riding. And then growing up as a surfer in Southern California, Malibu, that was always kind of like my mentality and of approach. But the equipment never really promoted that. So this has been we're almost getting to a 10-year journey of refining and creating shapes that stimulate a surfing experience on snow.
Man, I love that so much. And going over your Instagram, your website, and really following your community has been really cool to see. And I want to reach back to what you said about, the thrashing the mountain really was something that you kind of moved away from. Were you ever, one of those thrashers that were just getting out there and hitting park, flipping, spinning, getting out of the pipe? Was that ever you, or have you always been, the Malibu surfer looking for that flow state on the mountain?
Well, I kind of have a little Johnny Tsunami story where we moved from the beach to Montana about 9 years old. Went through a series of depression as the fall came around until we discovered that snow could be slid upon. At that time, snowboarding wasn't really a common thing. So I kind of got thrown on skis, which evolved into the freestyle ski club. And that was a very, it was kind of a focused on this Olympic sport of like bumps and jumps, where you kind of go straight down the fall line as fast as you can, hitting all the bumps along the way, a couple jumps in between, and try to hold it all together. So that it was like competitive. It was pretty extreme for its day. That kind of played out for a little bit until we kind of started playing with this idea of a more freestyle expression around the mountain. We had kind of heard of these twin tip skis coming out, but none of us could really afford or access them. So we were taking our skis, boiling them in a pot of water, sticking them in the deck, cranking the tails back, and creating our own little tips out the back so that we could ride backwards. And we kind of had this posse of, going out, building these kickers in the back or side country where the ski patrol wouldn't knock them down, jibbing on all kinds of things. But it's like park wasn't a thing. And then park became a thing, and we already kind of had an advancement on that. It's like, oh, well, I already know how to do these jumps and these tricks, and now I can kind of actually go to a big resort where they've groomed in this perfect 30-foot kicker, fully calculated with launch and landing, and now we can kind of do that. So I kind of rolled that all the way through high school, and suffered a couple injuries because of that too, kind of the pushing it. But we were also kind of, again, pretty far away from the park-esque environment. So that wasn't really a big inspiration where, there were more guys who were going off in the backcountry to climb these mountains and get these, beautiful lines, or the resort that I was at, it was only open Thursday through Sunday. So every Thursday was a powder Thursday. So it was all about going and getting the powder. And it wasn't like, gnarly extreme terrain. It was actually pretty low angle. So bringing some kind of extremeness to that, jumping and jibbing off of things while, going through. But yeah, it just kind of like seemed like the guys that I was kind of looking up to, were really the ones who had kind of like dedicated their life to this winter pastime, to going out, being out there with their friends, really enjoying the freshness of it, always experimenting with different equipment in order to do that better. And then when I left high school to go to college, I was trying to figure out where I would go. And because snow was such a big part of my life at that time, I ended up Googling universities near Whistler, and ended up at the University of British Columbia, which was an amazing place unto itself, with a temperate rainforest and a nude beach, and weed is legal and you can drink at 19. And it was just a party. And then they also had a bus that came right to the dorms at 5 a.m. to bring you to Whistler for first chair. And I probably put on 70 days that first year season, and ended up
solid.
Yeah, a little too solid for my my class load.
Sure.
For education purposes.
But when I went to Whistler, I somehow had this feeling, it's like, I've kind of maxed out skiing, or I could, if I was going to keep going, it would go into this big air and competitions and park and whatever. And the year before, my senior in high school, a friend had given me a snowboard. And I had gone out maybe, 6 or 7 days and like kind of figured the thing out. And it happened pretty naturally. No lessons, just jamming with a couple friends. Oh, got to keep up. And then it's like I kind of liked how it brought me way back down to the simplicity of it. So when I went to Whistler, I just brought the snowboard. And from that point on, I never turned back.
Sick. Dude, you said something, a couple things actually. The first thing was you were talking about the early days of park and that sort of thing. And, I've been in the industry for quite some time now, and I remember those days. And I was one of those people who, dude, I'd get broke off every time I'd hit one of these massive jumps, and they're not even massive compared to today's standards, but trajectory would be off just barely a degree or two, and all of a sudden you're going flat or whatever happens. And so I was one of those people like you who was like, I'm personally going to take this to the backcountry. I'm going to learn air awareness by dropping cliffs and that sort of thing versus like just hucking myself off a jump that's hard packed, that chances are I got 50-50 of even staying balanced in the air, let alone stomping it out. And that really resonates with me because I rode with a crew who were like all kinds of good. And my whole thing was like, I'll rip through the park with you, but I'm not hitting those jumps. I'm not hitting those rails really. I want to take it to the backcountry. And so a lot of us had taken the skills we had already had and wanted to progress, but with soft landings, with lower consequences to high impacts and stuff like that. So that really resonates with me because I'm primarily a big mountain backcountry rider. I compete on the Paralympic side for snowboarding, and my whole thing, like I'm known as a racer technically, but my whole soul is in the backcountry. That's where I find I get to be most free and enjoy. And that's where I always say, like, that's where I feel closest to God, whatever that is to anybody. That's where I feel like I actually get to be one. So I really appreciate that you mentioned just the old school days of parks where, you were sustaining injuries and that sort of thing just because of what they were at the time, and now that most of them are perfect in every aspect so that they can be as safe as possible. But, yeah, that really resonated with me. And then going back to Sleep's original question of the, kind of that unison of the mountain, that resonates with me as well. When I was reading up on your bio and that sort of thing, I was like, oh, this guy gets it. Like, it's not a battle between elements. Like, sure, there is that once in a while where you've got to win, I guess, out there. But it's really, to me, it's like this unison of the rider and nature, and you get a chance to really have this dance versus this face off in a sense.
Do you think that you found that in age? Do you think as you've aged, I know we're you and I are probably on our latter half of our 30s right now, Aaron, I don't know how old you are, but I know as a kid, man, I love spinning. I love flipping. I loved hitting the biggest jumps that I knew I was capable of hitting. However, now, man, I love cruising on my longboard, just cruising. I love surfing. Again, just cruising, nothing crazy. I'm not ripping crazy turns, aerials, nothing like that. I don't have that skill, but just being out there, being in nature, and just, that meditation, that act of meditation is out. I don't know if that's what you call it, but that's just amazing. It's amazing. It's where it's at.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And it might've come with age. I never really was a competitive sports person. And, and I think skiing and snowboarding kind of like kept me away from being a basketball jock or a football jock. And yeah, and it was like even doing the freestyle competitions is like, well, this is just the way for me to, one, progress and train and become the best rider I can be, but also to hang out with my friends and do these activities, go to these different places. That'd be cool. It's like, oh, we do our 2 runs of competition, then we actually get to go ride the rest of the mountain and meet all these other riders. So I never really had that competitive nature ingrained in it, but I saw it, and I saw it developing, and I saw, snowboarding and skiing going into the Olympics as a competitive sport, which always seemed a little strange to me. Like, I definitely understand that there is an element of training involved, of performance involved, but comping that up to other people, or trying to conquer the mountain, always seemed a very bizarre aspect, like a humanized element put onto this thing. That's like, the difference between a sport and an art form. For me, it's always seemed like an art form. Oh, give me that big open palette, and so I can just go and lay open my turns and paint the canvas however is most in alignment with who and where I am, the equipment I'm on, the conditions they are, the terrain, how that's featuring. If I can most align all those things together, to me, that it becomes this active meditation. How can I most be attuned to exactly what's going on beyond myself? Just bringing myself into this bigger equation and lining all those things up together. And when you hit that turn with that G-force in under that wind lip, and all those things just kind of have lined up together to put you there in the light this way and then this way. That's why I love, filming and creating more versions of art for that. If I can create the tool itself, if I can, stylize myself and my movements to match with that terrain and hit it from this angle with this light, and now we're painting this whole picture. It's just a very different, thing. And I guess I've always resonated with like the free surfer, the guy who's like, oh, you guys are competing on 2-foot slop at Huntington while I'm over in Indo surfing, overhead barrels with nobody out. Like, why would I choose to be doing that? And, if you're in a high density population and you need to stand out, and that's, your way of making your way through the world. Okay. Totally. And I think that there is definitely something to the competitor. But I resonated very early that I wasn't that. And so for me, it's always like, how can I get like 5 feet further away from anybody else's track? Because then I'm getting fresh pow. And that's all that really matters to me.
That side stash, that side pow, dude, that's I live for that some days. I mean, I live just outside of Aspen, Colorado. And so we're on Icon and all that other stuff, and we definitely have our busy time of the year. And some days I'm just looking for one slash. It's almost like golf. It's like it's that one shot that keeps me coming back, in the sense of like, I mean, snowboarding's my life. It's my heart and soul. But sometimes it's just that one slash that makes me want to go out tomorrow. And if I am battling the elements, half the time it's crowds, not the mountain. So I appreciate that. 100%. When I was looking at some of your videos and stuff, dude, you have a really unique stance. You were talking about kind of gear setup, all that kind of stuff. Can you give us a brief overview of your stance? Because I know it's super unique in general, but it's also, very stances are particular to the rider. Everyone does something a little different usually, with the exception of the freestyle guys, I suppose. Give us a quick breakdown, if you wouldn't mind, of your stance width and your angles and how that helps you lay that perfect carve or arc that perfect turn, slashing that snow to paint the canvas.
Yeah, I would say my stance has kind of evolved from 2 elements. The first one being the directional board. And that, I kind of started picking off of like these hard booters, right? On these like, narrow racing hard boots, but like they're on I've seen them and it's like they're on like 45, 30. Like they are super posy, very close stance, almost a mono ski, but they're still in sideways stance. So watching them was very inspiring to see how they could apply their edge control using their body mechanics. So that was like already one thing. It's like, oh, well, these guys know that if they engineer their stance directionally, they can optimize their riding versus a twin tip stance, essentially, being a way that you can ride forward and backwards, but you're kind of sacrificing high performance in either way. Yes, it's a great skill to be able to ride both ways, switch and regular. But because of that and having a board set up like that, it really kind of decreases, the optimization of the board. Having a directional board allows you for more nose, less tail. That means more float and quicker maneuverability. Some of these key things is oh, that's more important to me to float better in powder than to, be able to ride backwards. Okay. Then the second part of that would be coming from a surfing background. I set up my stance exactly how I would naturally pop up on a surfboard. And now that was an interesting one too, because when I first started surfing after been snowboarding so long in this twin stance, I was jumping up twin. I was jumping up duck footed, every time in the squat stance. And every time I get up, I'd pitch over and I couldn't hold it together and I couldn't understand why. No, I should be good at this, right? But without the bindings and moving the board from the foot, then the body was falling off, from the platform. And once I kind of watched more guys and got a little bit more tuned in, that if I put my front foot more forward and instead of toe to heel, I was rolling over kind of from big toe to pinky toe and allowing that to be, then all of a sudden my body shifted more open down the line. I had a lot more range of motion on my backside, and the smallest nuance could actually affect the board. So now instead of turning from my feet, I actually turn from where I'm looking and where maybe my hand is. Because if my hand opens, my shoulder opens. If my shoulder opens, my hip opens. If my hip is opening, my whole body is pitching over. And everything sets in motion from there. So it's kind of just come off of that. And it's and people set up their stance well, how would you pop up on your surfboard? Here's a yoga mat. Go ahead, pop up, And yes, it might be a little different from a shortboard, longboard surfer, but it's getting them into that general idea and leading with the hand, okay, about shoulder width. I'll ride between about 27 and 32 in the front foot. Back foot has kind of played with 0, but I'm moving more posy about 6 degrees so I can bend the back knee in versus pitching, bow-legged out. And somehow in there, it kind of just lined up.
So it makes total sense. I'm thinking about, popping up surfing, and I would say that my back foot is likely, forward canted, probably a couple degrees. And it's interesting. It's something I'd never really considered. It'd almost be awkward popping up in a duck stance on a surfboard. It actually would be. It'd be super awkward.
It's so awkward.
Yeah.
I've definitely tried it, and that board slips out from underneath you every time. There's nothing I can do about it unless I am slightly posy.
Yeah.
And on a surfboard, you can adjust your feet, while you go. They can be narrower, they can be wider. Your back foot might open up for this maneuver and it might close down for this maneuver. Snowboarding, you kind of just have to pick a median of that. Something that kind of goes that direction, but not too extreme in any one way, so you can keep playing it. But I played with all kinds of stuff like rotating base pads or sliding on channels, or there's all kinds of different free your foot kind of ideas. And it's well, dude, if you're gonna do that, just go pow surfing. Screw the bindings completely and just go without, and then you really get that. But why bindings became a thing, the same with why edges became a thing and side cuts became a thing, because if you want to ride your board on a resort, you're getting on the chairlift, you're dealing with variable conditions, you're dealing with hard pack and not powder that you can kind of suspend into. Those were kind of those key features that like made the difference to be able to safely maneuver and now perform maneuver, but on the resort. But when you're not on the resort, like when we're in Alaska, it's kind of like, why am I having bindings? Like, I just power surf this thing and it totally works. So you kind of have to play around with those.
Yeah, sick. I love it. I went from super thugged out, as banged out of a stance as you could get from like, the early 2000s Mark Frank days, super duck footed, all that. My knees started going. And then like, as I progressed into like a competitive world with snowboarding, especially, so I race border cross. So like that is a very different beast in and of itself. And I actually went all the way up to, 24 and I think posi 6 to posi 9 at one point. I've backed it off now. I'm at like 18 and -3. That's kind of my sweet zone, to be able to hold edge on both sides on hard pack and whatnot. So I love hearing this kind of stuff because as Sleep knows, like I geek out for days on people's setups and tech and all this other stuff, and love hearing what makes people tick on that side of things because everyone is different. And like I said, stances are unique to the rider. So appreciate your thought on that. Really do.
The innovation piece is so interesting to me because recently we had Bob Klein on here and, he's an OG snowboarder, Tahoe, first half pipe ever, him and his buddies. I mean, it was just really cool to hear how they were innovating with the old winter sticks and what they were doing to kind of push their limits and test new ways, to make it down the mountain. So it's awesome to hear that as a child, you did that, with your skis and that just kind of formed into your lifestyle now and what you're building and you're doing some crazy stuff. You're all over the world. I think you were in Morocco for a couple of weeks, reading about your bus tour across the Sierras, the Cascades, the Rockies. Man, it's so sick, and it seems like you're doing it with a community that you've developed on your own, a community of snow surfers. Talk to me a little bit about that community. Are you guys meeting frequently? How does that work? How does one get involved? How does one, become a member of the Elevated Surfcraft community?
Yeah, so it's a very organic play. And, if I would have like thought of it more, like maybe it would have been a little more structured and planned out and stuff. But it's like it really came from, okay, so I have this kind of crazy, bizarro product that I'm, trying to get out there. And it's not for everybody. But maybe... And usually at any given mountain on any given day, there's a handful of people who just might be interested enough. And, so we started rolling around with the bus and we just park at the base of the hill. We'd put the boards out, and it wouldn't be one of those like, oh, this is the demo tent and like, come by and we're going to turn your binding and stuff. And like have to be somebody who's really like, what do you got going on over there? Or like, oh, I remember, I used to have an old Sims that looked like that. Or some of the like these little conversations that start going. It's like, oh yeah, dude, these are my boards. I'm making this and doing that. Oh, that's really cool. Like, are you selling them? Are you demoing them? Like, what's the deal? It's like, well, if you want to ride one, like, I'd be happy to go out and ride with you because, it almost came to this point where it's like, I don't ride with snowboarders anymore. Snowboarders have a certain pace and movement and momentum across the mountain and approach that like I just don't quite resonate with. It's like I'm taking my time. I'm maybe moving to this. No, dude, I want to go to the green run and I want to make, 100 turns on this green run. Well, you're just so it's like I really only want to ride with other people who are on the same wavelength. Oh, you seem to be on this wavelength? Yeah, let's go take a run together. Oh, we ride the run, ride the rest of the day. Oh, dude, I really like this board. Da, 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 da. I'd really like to, buy one. And, then it always comes, it's like, well, the price point is, it's like, well, dude, what's actually more valuable to me than you paying full price on this is if, let's call it, $420 special, 50% off. And for that other 50%, like, here's a batch of stickers, and you are going to promise me that you're going to ride, 4 days a week, and you're going to spread the stoke. And if you do that, great for a year. Next year, I'm going to send you 2 more boards for your buddies. And now you guys go ride. And
collectively spread the stoke.
And so then they go, and then it's like, oh, then I come back next year. And now all of a sudden there's 4 of them, and they're all riding together, and they've kind of created this new posse. And then that posse, they go from Tahoe and they go up to Bachelor. And then there's a Bachelor posse, and then that posse gets together. And now it's like, and we have these crews in Japan, we have these crews in Italy, and across Europe, we have these crews in Chile. And all of these people are now naturally like finding their community of people. It's like, hey man, like I've seen you on Instagram. I know you're down in Santiago. Do you have any hookups? Oh, hey bro, why don't you just like come and stay at my house, and I'll like introduce you to all of my friends. And we were all riding elevated, and it just kind of starts to generate this very organic, but it's a community based off of not necessarily proximity or, what is the coolest, but more like the people. It's like a party wave. Everybody's on the same wavelength and enjoying the ride together, more so even necessarily than their own personal performance. But then when you get them together, it's like, oh, this guy's been dialing in this board, and this guy's dialing in this board, and wow, double hand carve, like da 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 da. Like, how do you do that? Can you show? Oh, now this guy knows how to do that, and it just kind of spreads a little bit and a little bit. And there's so many people in this world. There's so many different types of communities, and there's so much, competition, who's the best and who's this. And to just have, and snowboarding is this awesome thing that sits outside of all that. And so the ones who like really appreciate that and go a little bit further with that, they really, oh, you're like that too? Oh, cool. Like, let's be friends.
I love it. Like snowboarding in general is just kind of an against the grain activity in the first place. And so that, I started on skis also. And so that really resonates with me because it was something I wanted to do from the get-go. And I didn't really actually resonate, like fly on that same wavelength as all the skier kids. And it wasn't until I started hanging out with this snowboarder buddy of mine that was like, hey, do you snowboard? Do you want to go out sometime? And I was like, well, I ski. And he's like, bro, you got to get a snowboard. And, I've told the story of how I acquired my first snowboard quite a few times now. But at the end of the day, as soon as I strapped that thing on my feet, it was like, oh my God, I'm finally free. Like I get to do my thing, express my way. And I get to do it with people that kind of see it the same way as me. So I love that you've kind of created this little subculture of a ski industry that really wasn't accepting of it in the first place. It's sick how you're going around and just sharing the stoke with people. And if they resonate and you guys vibe, all of a sudden you're building this tribe. I love it. This is sick.
I couldn't agree more. And Aaron, I know you're short on time, and I know that there's so many more things I want to talk about. I had this like long list. I know Keith, you sent me over your list of things just because we're so stoked to have you here. We're stoked to know you. What we'll do is we'll set up more in the future, but I just texted you over something. If you can kind of look at your Instagram, man, I texted you over if it's possible. If it's not possible, no worries. So we have a social club ourselves. It's a Shredding Sassy social club. We're a part of it. And we are a group of geographically dispersed shredders who are looking to connect in different ways with one another. And we are really hoping that we can connect with you more. We are based on a digital asset, kind of grants you into that club. We had one of our artists create a special one for you, Aaron. Aaron, it is the dopest one I've ever seen. I've seen a couple of these, Aaron. We hear you laughing. We can't see your face right now. I need your face back because our artist Jurassic Kings is such a dope artist. He does all of his work for free. He's a community member. He's a part of the Shredding Sashie Social Club. He did that art for you. And I'll tell you what, when I told him we were meeting with you, he put that together in like 2 hours. Dude,
he's a G.
Yeah, just crazy. And I was so excited. He sent it to me probably like 3 weeks ago. And I was like, I want to send this to Aaron right now. And I was like, oh, I like, it's just so dope, man. So we'll definitely show that on the screen here during the podcast when this airs, but man, how dope is that?
Amazing, guys. Thank you so much. I feel honored to be a part of the community.
Dude, I mean, when I saw it, I was like, this is from what I know of the guy, just from looking him up and seeing the photos and everything. I was like, oh my God, this is him. This is the perfect rendition of an actual human. That it's the best one we've seen so far. I mean, I've got a sick one, but that one it's top tier. It's the best.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So dope, man.
Yeah, so sick. I'm stoked you like it. Stoked to have you part of the crew. I got one more question if we've got time. You know, I know you went over to Japan and had a great experience over there. Can I just ask, is like elevated surfcraft like the American version of the Gentemstick, or are you headed that way? Because we all know like the Gentemstick is like, in my opinion, it's one of the highest regarded snowboard for handcrafted stuff and made for the rider itself. Is that the trajectory of elevated surfcraft?
I mean, that was a major inspiration, along with the entire Moss movement that kind of predated Gentemstick, and to be over there and ride with Gentem riders and see how those boards work in the terrain and the conditions, and also this very mature and artistic riding style that goes along with the equipment. So major inspiration, and their inspiration very much came from that winter stick and Sims back in the 80s. And they kind of just continued progressing through there, where here we went to twin tips in the 90s and kind of started moving in that direction. They just kept refining pretty much to create these Ferraris of snowboards. And, you know, a lot of me like looks back and is like, man, you know, I could have just like, you know, got a quiver of those and kind of just done that. But there were a few pieces of the equation that were missing for me. And it was like, one, the boot size, the width of the board. All those boards are designed for this smaller foot, like a size 9, 8, 9 boot. And perfectly balanced for that. But when you start bringing a bigger rider on, also some of the materials are a little more fragile and delicate. These beautiful bamboo sidewalls, which under the temperature and the conditions of soft snow in Japan work really well. But when you bring it over here to the US and we have, you know, harder, icier, paired with a more charger of a rider, wasn't really sustainable, mixed with the price point. Not everybody can afford that Ferrari to have that experience. But so it's those were kind of some of the pieces to it. But then it really came down to more, it's like a surfboard shaper shapes specially for their local break. They know how the wave that they live, all the nuances of their particular wave. And while most boards could work in most waves, you know, with the right rider who can adapt, you know, according to that, having something that is actually tuned, you know, specifically for that wave or for that style of rider ends up making a huge difference. And so snowboards, they're kind of this open source, you know, kind of area where, yeah, you could put a patent on this or you could put a patent on this, but, you know, and yes, if you're making boards for 100,000 people, it needs to be as generalized as possible. But if your focus is really on a particular demographic for a particular job and style, then you kind of start tuning in. And so that's where, we've made our boards wider. We use polyurethane sidewalls. We've kind of created a board that can handle the charge of the North American rider. We made a board for a size 14, 15 boot rider. Our salmon fish, where these guys have never actually felt what it feels like to hold an edge because their toes are always dragging. And so that's kind of where, and Karua kind of, they're doing their thing over in Europe, and it's having this regenerative movement. But, by kind of getting these different shapers who have different backgrounds in different locations under different conditions, then you get a whole variety that can kind of meet whoever, the particular person who's looking to get their equipment.
Yeah, I love it. It's all about art. It's art mixed with the durability to handle an American man or woman who wants to just charge and slash and thrash all over the mountain, but do it in an artistic form. Dude, I love it. I love it. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
Aaron, man, thank you very much for coming on with us today. So stoked to continue to integrate and learn more about you, learn more about your business. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find Elevated Surfcraft, and we'll close this thing down today.
So you can find Elevated Surfcraft on Instagram, elevated_surfcraft, on the web, elevatedsurfcraft.com. And keep an eye out for a colorful, uniquely shaped board with a stylized rider at your local mountain, and usually a couple of them riding together. Say hi, introduce yourself, and ask them for a ride. And they're usually probably pretty happy to share the experience with you.
Man, we're out in Tahoe. Not in Tahoe. We'll be in Tahoe in April. We'll have a Sassy Social Club meetup in Tahoe in April, and we have one in Colorado the first weekend of March. We're going to hit Copper. We're going to hit Vail. Man, I'm hoping I see some elevated boards out there. Maybe I can ride one. We'll see what happens. I'll try to find somebody.
Well, if I'm not out there personally, we'll get the Colorado Surf Club out there to join you.
Let's do it. I'd love that, man. Let's hook it up. Well, thank you again. This has been a great one. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate your time.
All right.
Join us on Thrash Talk. You.